Hello and welcome to Written Words. Today's lesson is a lesson in etiquette, and we're going to look at how to write an effective email, some common pitfalls to avoid when writing emails, and how emails differ from letters, texts, and face-to-face conversations. Emails are everywhere. Most of us have inboxes that are full of all kinds of messages, from reminders to pay bills, to adverts, to newsletters we don't even remember signing up for. And among those emails, somewhere among the hundreds of junk emails, there are usually one or two emails that actually require our attention. Many people, myself included, might admit to using the delete key to deal with the problem of too many emails. And I often find myself deleting emails without even having read them. So when we're writing an email, how can we write an email that is worth reading, that is not going to fall prey to the delete key? Here are 9 points to bear in mind when writing an email. The first point is the subject of the email. That's the part that people see before they even open it. So the subject is very important. You should use very few words, maybe just 1 or 2 words, and use them carefully. It should be something positive, not negative. Avoid very general subject headings. Some commonly used by scammers are hello or payment problem. So if you can use something that is very specific to your email, that says in just a couple of words what the email is actually about, so that the person who is receiving it knows what it's about and knows that it's something they need to click on and read. Point number 2, begin your message with some kind of polite greeting. Do you know the person's name? If you do, use it. If it's someone you're in first name terms with, then by all means use their first name. But if it's somebody you don't know very well, or if it's somebody who's in a senior position to you, then you may prefer to use their surname with Mr., Mrs., Ms. Alternatively, if you don't know their name, you could adopt a more general approach, such as good morning, good afternoon, or to whom it may concern, or dear all if it's for a few people. That said, the rules for email writing are less strict than letter writing, where there are specific rules about how to address a person at the beginning of a letter. As far as an email is concerned, just be polite. Third point, open the body of your email with something nice, something that shows a genuine interest in the person that you're writing to. For example, if you know they've been to a meeting recently, you could ask them how the meeting went. If they've been on holiday, I hope you enjoyed your holiday. Congratulations on winning the new contract. Or if they've sent you an email prior to your email, you could say thank you for your email, which acknowledges that you've received the email and presumably have also read it. If there isn't anything in particular that you can refer to, you could just say, I hope you're well. Don't spend too long on this though. Just 1 sentence is enough. It's not the main part of the email. It's just to add a personal connection very quickly before you launch into the actual body of your email. Having said that, on the further reading recommendations on the worksheet that goes with this lesson, I've recommended a couple of resources from the BBC website, and one of them actually recommends against what I've just said. So in their opinion, to put that extra information is too much, it's superfluous. But in my opinion, in my personal experience, it's nice to just establish some kind of personal connection with the person that you're emailing. Part 4, avoid using capital letters and exclamation marks. This is generally, in writing, and especially in email, considered as shouting. If you write a sentence in capital letters, the person who is reading it imagines that you're shouting at them. So it can be offensive, it can be understood as quite rude. So avoid using capital letters and also exclamation marks if you want to avoid causing offence. Point number 5, use humour very carefully. If you're writing to somebody you know very well, if it's a close friend or a colleague that you work with regularly and you know them really well, then humour is okay. But if it's somebody you don't know too well, you can't see their facial expressions because you're writing to them on a screen, it's harder to gauge what they will find funny and what they won't. So when you're writing to somebody you don't know very well, all but the lightest possible humour is best avoided. And the same goes for sarcasm. Sarcasm in writing, if you can't see the person's facial expressions and they can't see yours, sarcasm can be misconstrued and can cause offence. Point number 6, slang, emojis, abbreviations, etc. may be commonly used in text messages, but they're not so good in emails. If you are writing an email, it's not as formal as a letter, but it's also not as informal as a text message. It's somewhere in between the two. So although you don't need to follow the very strict rules for letter writing, you should spell words in full, you should use full sentences if at all possible, and you should try to use correct grammar, especially if you're writing in a professional context. Number 7, be positive as much as possible and avoid swearing. Negativity can be taken more seriously when it's in writing. When somebody makes a negative comment out loud, once they've finished speaking, it's gone. But when it's written down, it's there forever. And always bear in mind also that anything that's written down can be copied and pasted and passed around to other people. And you have no control over that once your email has been sent. Also, please and thank you are always a good idea. So don't overdo it, but add a gentle sprinkling of please and thank you to your email. Part 8, when you finish the body of your email, use a polite ending. Again, there are very formal and more informal endings that you can choose depending on who you're writing to. So yours sincerely, for example, would be very polite. Talk soon, see you later would be more appropriate for a friend, or somewhere in the middle you could use best regards or kind regards or an ending like that. And the final point, number 9, when you've written your email, check it very carefully before you send it. It's something I and many other people, I'm sure, have failed to do and then regretted it. It's a good idea, perhaps, when you're writing your email, not to put the address in the address box until you've finished writing. Or even better, compose your email offline, maybe in Word or something similar, and then when you're happy with it, copy and paste it into the email before you send it. Now let's take a look at 2 example emails that are very different in style. The first one says this: Subject: Requested documentation. Dear Mr. Bloggs, thank you for the documentation you sent. Please find attached the completed form as well as the agenda for next week's meeting. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Best regards, Jeffrey MacDonald. And the second one says this: Subject: Stuff. Forms attached. I need them filling in by Thursday. BTW, apparently management are planning to axe some jobs next week. Emoji. So how do these two emails differ in style? The first one begins with the subject requested documentation. It's very specific. It says what the email is about. Presumably the person receiving the email has requested some documentation and here it is. It then opens with Dear Mr. Bloggs. So it's polite, it's quite formal. Presumably Jeffrey MacDonald doesn't know Mr. Bloggs very well, or perhaps Mr. Bloggs is in a more senior position. So he's being polite. And his opening sentence establishes that personal connection. He says, "Thank you for the documentation you sent." So he's acknowledging that he's been sent some documents and presumably has read them or at least looked at them. So that establishes a personal connection between him and the person he's writing to. And then he carries on saying, "Please find attached the completed form as well as the agenda for next week's meeting." So he's put in the information he needs to convey, that he's sending a form as well as an agenda and that there's a meeting next week. So it's quite short, but it says everything that it needs to say, and it says it politely. And then he ends with, "I look forward to seeing you on Thursday." Again, another little personal connection. He's acknowledging that he's going to meet Mr. Bloggs next Thursday. And then he finishes with "Best regards," another polite ending, Jeffrey MacDonald. The second email has the subject stuff. It doesn't tell us very much at all. It's colloquial, it's quite abrupt, and it gives you no idea of what might be in this email. And then when you open the email, there is no greeting. It simply launches into "forms attached," which is not even a full sentence. He then continues, or she, we don't know who the person is because they haven't signed their name, by saying, "I need them filling in," and then "by Thursday" is written in capital letters. So we assume from that the person is shouting at us. And finally, BTW, which is an abbreviation for "by the way." Apparently management are planning to axe some jobs next week, and he's got an emoji. So in this sentence, he or she is spreading some gossip, which is not a good idea in an email. If management were to see this email and see what he's written, they wouldn't be too pleased to find that he's sharing their private information. So the two emails are very different. The first one is formal, it's polite, it conveys the necessary information. The second one is not polite at all, and it's not formal at all. And the tone of the email suggests to us that that person is perhaps not in a very good mood. We're going to look at some beginnings and endings of emails that you can use, depending on the level of formality or familiarity that you want to use. So the most polite openings and endings you can use are probably the same kind that you might use in a formal letter. If you know the person's name, you would start with "Dear" and then Mr. Smith, Mrs. Bloggs, Ms. Jones, whatever the name is. If you don't know the name, you could say "Dear Sir" or "Madam," or "To whom it may concern." And then at the end of the email, you could use "Yours sincerely" or "Yours faithfully." A step down from that, if you want to be still polite but not ultra formal, you could begin, if you know the person's name, with perhaps their first name, dear Sarah, dear Mike. If you didn't know their name, you could start with good morning or good afternoon. Or if you were writing to more than one person, you could begin with dear all. And then you might decide to end with a greeting like kind regards or best regards, or many thanks if you've asked them to do you a favour. And then finally, at the bottom level, if you're writing to somebody that you're very familiar with, somebody that you're on first name terms with, you're friendly with, you could use a more familiar greeting like hi or hello. And you could finish with something like all the best, talk soon, or see you later. And now for our writing prompt for this lesson. Have a go at writing an email to some colleagues, either real colleagues or imaginary ones, inviting them to a meeting. So make sure you include important details like the date, the time and the place of the meeting, as well as the matters to be discussed and anything they may need to bring or prepare. And decide, depending on who the colleagues are that you're writing to and your relationship with them, decide on a suitable greeting, a suitable ending, and how you might make a personal connection with them. Do download the worksheet for this lesson, which includes some notes on what we've been talking about, the 2 sample emails we discussed, some language details, and also some examples of further reading which you might find useful. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.